Yes.
Okay. So far, we have more than 160 people attending, which is excellent news. So welcome to the event, Internet of Things for Healthcare. This event is jointly hosted by Merseyside and West Cheshire Local Network, and also the IET Internet of Things Technical Network. I'm very happy to say my co-host, Andy Caldos, is the ex-chair of the Merseyside and West Cheshire Local Network. And the speaker tonight, Mike McKean, is chair of the IET Internet of Things Technical Network. So we have all the important people here tonight. Mike is also a panel member of the Ministry of Defense, Defense Science and Technology Lab for CPNT. I'm sure Mike will give us more details about that. Mike, can you please start your talk, please? So before that, perhaps Andy, do you want to show some slide about our local network? Andy? You're muted, Andy. Andy, you're muted.
Unmute.
Yeah.
You are muted.
Yes, you're muted, Andy.
It says unmute. I pressed unmute.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
You can hear me. It's
Yeah.
all right now.
Yes.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
So, right. If everybody can hear me, I'd just like to welcome you on behalf of the Mersey and West Cheshire Local Network in today's event, webinar. And our network includes the Isle of Man, as it's shown on my first slide. I'd like to show you a brief introduction on the network and the things that we do. So we are the manufacturing and management group who organized this meeting with the help of Mike McKean. And if you need to contact me, I am the chair of the group and the deputy chair is Michael Gilbert. Now we aim to share engineering success and innovation. We try to raise awareness of the importance of design, manufacturing, management, and their integration. And we try to promote novel technologies, techniques, and best practices in the region, as we are going to do it today. Well, that will be today on the 3rd of February. We have some more events up until July. Being the first one is advanced applications in optical 3D metrology. The second one is a technical visit to Bilfinger UK, talking about digital solutions. And then we're going to visit Getsack for transmissions to talk about practical implementation of Industry 4.0. And the usual IT leadership seminar is going to take place on the 23rd of June. And the last one within this COVID, hopefully within the COVID session, is digital technologies enabling business reimagination. Please note, all these events will be webinars. Today's event is the Internet of Things for Healthcare. And that's, as Jifeng suggested, announced at a joint event with the IT Internet of Things Technical Network. And our speaker is Mike McKean today, who is the chair of the IT Technical Network and panel member of the MOD Defense Science and Technology for Sapient. Before I hand it over to Mike, you are most welcome to come here, and we really appreciate your contribution to our work. Before we leave it to Mike, I'd just like to talk about briefly on the webinar arrangement today. So the time span is about 40-50 minutes, depending on Mike and your questions. And Mike has expressed his view that the question and answer session should be included. He is very brave and questions will be answered during his presentation. Please use the question box to ask your questions. And I'd like to draw your attention to the CPD facility, which will be provided on request please do contact me on this email address, andrew.caldas@antiaword.com. Thank you for listening. Let me just take the pleasure of handing it over to you, Mike. It's your turn. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. If you could stop sharing, please. Thank you very much.
I try to do my best and find to stop sharing. Mute. Let's just move it here. Stop share is here.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
Thank you very much.
And I
thank you.
Turn my video off. Okay.
Right. So give me a second, and I will pull up my slides. Hold on a minute. Give me a second.
It should be all right.
That's okay. I'm just going to share my screen now. Sorry about that.
It always takes a few seconds to get things sorted.
It's okay. Thank you. Right. So my name is Mike McKean. I've got about 10 slides here, and if you've got any questions, please send them into the questions and chat area, and I'll go through them. So the experience that I'm going to be relying on is a couple of large projects I've been involved in. So this first one was pre-COVID, and it is for a very large project in Europe, several thousand ventilators, people's homes and in hospitals. And that started pre-COVID, and I can't discuss specific customer details, but I can be very pleased to answer general questions. And I've got a new one just starting now. It's very similar, except they also want, for another country, except they also want to include real-time video conferencing while patients are taken from their homes or an accident scene back to the hospital. So hold on a second. I'm just waiting on the next slide coming through. Right, so I was asked to begin with who am I? I'll do that in a minute. Introduction to the IoT, so a little bit about the technology, some facts and figures, partly from medical facts and figures, some benefits, costs, and some the challenges are really surprising, especially when there's so many benefits to this. Who am I? So the IET is the Institute of Engineering and Technology, for those that don't know. We have 168,000 members who are they're not usually IT support people, they're usually people involved in research and development, academics, and they tend to work for large manufacturers and utilities. And we have several committees that advise government and large companies. I was the vice chair of the IoT committee, I'm now the chair. I'm also involved, I'm ex-military, I'm also involved with something called the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, which is an executive agency of the Ministry of Defence. And in that role, I advise on using modern technology such as Internet of Things and M2M and AI and ML in a military environment. I'm ex-military as a technical person. I happen to have a day job at IoT sales across Europe and the Middle East. I'm a certified Prince 2 project manager. The benefit of that is to customers, we talk a common language and I understand their issues. I'm quite old, that's the last slide. I'm always learning. I just bought a Jetson Nano AI box with wheels, a little car thing to do some learning about AI and robotics. Let's move on to the IoT. So what is it? I'm going to run through these really fast. And then at the end, I'll go through the questions. So forgive me for running through these fast. If you've got questions, write them down somewhere and I can come back through the slides afterwards. So what's IoT? So remember, I don't know the audience here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a fairly middle sort of level in terms of technology. And although I'm talking about medical, this is relevant to industry or medical or anything. So on the left are the sensors. So these could be something as simple as a temperature sensor at a patient or something measuring his or her pulse rate, or a large machine. This large machine typically costs 40,000 euros, 100,000 euros. And these two machines might be at a patient's bedside, whether that patient is at home or in a hospital. The cloud here is the medical environment, the medical cloud, where the data is processed and the application runs. So something that's quite important for medical people and IT people is a bit of a gotcha or a problem to avoid here. What you can do is buy little modems, little SIM card type sensors that plug into these devices. And rather than have this, because this gateway can cost anything from about 500 euros to 1,000 euros. And if you've got thousands of patients, thousands of patients times 400 or 500 euros is a lot of money. And some of these sensors can be quite low cost if you plug some sort of modem into them. So people will say, why should I have this expensive gateway? Well, let me explain why. If you go after a trial with a handful of sensors and the data back to the back end, what I've found in the medical world is the medical people need updates all the time, permanently, every second. And you're just sending messages back from this sensor to the back end. And it's not too bad. 4 or 5,000 patients streaming data back here from 4 or 5,000 patients. In the normal industrial world, you wouldn't do that. So there's two gotchas here. One is in a normal industrial world, you wouldn't do that. You would not do that. You need an IoT gateway to filter out the standard readings, i.e., if this is a machine and it's working as normal, you don't need to send anything back. Now, here's a big gotcha. This is really important. In the medical world, you are not allowed to use a gateway to filter out the traffic. And so in the medical world, 100% of every piece of information from these sensors must be sent back to the application. If you do not do that, this 400 or 500 or $1,000 euro gateway has to be medically certified, because that IoT gateway is now making decisions, medical decisions, what data to send back. So let me run through again. In a normal industrial world, you would use one of these, but you'd use that to filter out non-essential data and just send exception reports back. In the medical world, you must not do that. You must send 100% of all data back to the back end. Right, another gotcha specific to the medical world is that if this is in a patient's house, you cannot identify that patient. Normally, if you're technical, you know what I'm going to say now. You cannot even use them. You should not even use the MAC address, the MAC ID of that device, because you must not be able to identify that patient in any way from the data that comes through here. So the question is, how does the medical practitioner at the back end know which patient is the data is about? So what happens is, in the back end, you have a database, and in one column of a database are all the patient's details, their personal details, their home address, everything. In another column is a random identifier of some description, could be anything, it's a random identifier. And what we do is, in this gateway here, we load that random identifier and say, all messages that you now send include the random identifier, and then it's all the data is anonymized. That random identifier is meaningless to anyone trying to read that data. It's encrypted at rest, it's encrypted in transit, but still you need to anonymize the data. And only when it gets to the back end is the random identifier correlated with the person's details. Again, about IoT, a little bit of technical detail here. When these messages come, by the way, this is an Amazon or AWS cloud. What I'm about to explain is the same for any type of cloud or on-premises solution. This is what's called a message broker. And what happens is the message comes in from the patient's home or from a hospital, and it then routes the message and attaches that random identifier to the database table, and then that goes to the non-volatile storage. So that means storage that is not easily corrupted or data is not easily lost. And then that's published to the website. And that website allows a doctor or medical practitioner or a nurse or anyone to access the data from their phone or tablet or PC. I've got some other points, but I'll come on to them later in the next couple of slides. And this is very busy, but I'm going to come back to it and explain it. So this is, you see the top right here, it says PwC. This is PricewaterhouseCoopers. They're a very large consultancy used by very big firms, big banks, and the medical people, etc. You can't read the text, it's too small. So what I've done is, the bottom line is, there's some major figures here. They're on the next slide. So I only brought that up there so you can see it's from PwC. So here's the main points. And remember, this, by the way, is pre-COVID and during COVID. We all know there's severe strains on the medical authorities, partly because people like me are old, you know? And we're all putting, again, pre-COVID, we're all putting a lot of stress and strain on the medical systems. And remember, I've been doing this pre-COVID, and people were saying, oh, do I have to go to the doctors? Can't you just connect with me online, please? And so there's been pressure on medical authorities throughout the world to be more modern and to use online facilities and consultations. And there's a lot of, this is not a political thing here, this about the integrated community care. If you start having the ability to, in the medical world, they've had something called HL7, which is a back-end application level protocol that allows medical practitioners to share data about patients for a long time. But what they have not had is the ability to have on their phone or their tablet or their PC or a patient in transit in an ambulance, share the data about what's happening, and then share data online between social care, mental health, everything so easily. And the reason for that is a lot of the medical machines, and I'll cover this on a couple of slides' time. By the way, if I'm talking too fast, sorry, I'm trying to get through these slides quickly so we can have questions real time afterwards. What you'll find in the medical world is that medical machine manufacturers often have proprietary communication from their box, their device, to their cloud. So if you're a medical authority and you've got patients who have got 3 or 4 or 5 machines connected to that patient, you've probably got 3 or 4 or 5 possible different clouds to connect to. And what those medical manufacturers do, perhaps by accident, or maybe I'm a cynic, they have proprietary communication methods so that they own the patient, they own that medical practitioner, they own that patient's data. They keep it confidential. And then what we do is we put one of our gateways in that patient's, next to that patient's bed. We can connect to multiple different machines and display that data in a format that the doctor wants. I'll come on to that a bit later on as well, because if you're a medical practitioner watching this little PowerPoint now, you know what it's like when you go from patient to patient or ward to ward, and there's different machines from different manufacturers that do the same things, and they display data differently, and the buttons are in the wrong place. Wouldn't it be lovely if you could go to any patient anywhere and the buttons are where you expect and the graphs are in the right place, less mistakes? I'll come on to that in a minute. And then the other thing from the PwC slide is, and this comes back to what my second project is, which is if you can start receiving data real time from that patient from their home when they've had an accident or been very ill in the ambulance and have real-time video conferencing, you start to have really good, better information about the patient before they get to accident and emergency. This is also from PwC, forgive me. I'm trying to find information that wasn't from vendors. So what you find when you do searches for IoT, you pull up lots of vendors, manufacturers, sales pitches. So I was trying to find consultants that said things. And again, what I've got here in the next slide is a detail. But the bottom line is, and it sounds like a business. It looks like a business when you read it. Improving logistics better, grow revenue or increase profits. But it's actually about health organizations. I was quite surprised. I lived in America for 10 years, and I like the medical system personally because they are terrified of litigation. They are so efficient, and profit is not a bad word over there. So let's look at a bit more detail about what they said. And again, if you're a medical person, if you're a medical person, you'll know about this, i.e., you're a doctor and you go into the hospital or something and you sign for all the equipment in that ward or that area, and then someone needs a device for an emergency. You can't say no, you can't have it. You know, someone just grabs that machine, wheels it around somewhere else, and you've lost it. So they use something called RFID, radio frequency ID. You can track things real time. Predictive maintenance. So this has been common a lot in the industrial marketplace. You know, if you start planning for maintenance, if you can monitor a machine and say, this machine's running a little bit hot, rather than wait till it breaks, you get alarms telling you this machine's starting to run a bit hot, you know, a week or two before it breaks. Accurate tracking. So that's more from the hospital's finance department. You know, they've got it on a 3-year lease. How old is it? When's the lease paid for? That's good for financial tracking, but also for the technical people. You know, what firmware has it got? When did we buy it? How compatible is it with other things? But as above, and I'm seeing higher rates. I'm seeing much higher rates in the industrial world than this. However, hey, 42% improvement, 58% improvement is great. You know, why wouldn't you do that? So this is a picture, a graphic way of describing how the doctors are seeing things. You know, they're going from site to site. What I'm seeing right now in the environments I'm working in is that where people are sick at home, and traditionally what they've done is they send some sort of carer to the patient's house for a short visit, you know, 10 or 15 minutes, just to take readings. And really it ends up being a social visit, and it's more of a personal visit to see how they are, etc. And that's fine, it's got a lot of value, but if you've got instant access from the practitioner to the patient, that makes the patient much more reassured. You know, rather than worry about calling the doctor, if there's problems, the doctor knows he or she is sick. All right, the benefits. This is really important. This is really, really good. And this is huge. I've seen a lot of this. If you're a sick patient at home or in a hospital and you're connected to 3 or 4 ventilator type machines, then if you're a doctor or a medical practitioner, you've got instant access to them wherever you are. So the second one, no retraining. I want to just talk about this for a minute. So remember before I said there are 3 or 4 or 5 different medical machines, and the medical machine manufacturers often, well, they have proprietary messaging protocols, but underneath that, and the chips that make those networking cards and the chip that make those serial connection cards or USB cards, they're all the same. All they do is they reorder the bits, etc., or they make it difficult to reverse engineer their data. And that means that when you buy some of their machines, you're locked into those machines. And here's what I've done with my large projects, so that what I get is the medical authority says to their medical machine suppliers, we're looking at using IoT. And the medical machine manufacturers go, no, don't do that. We'll offer you our IoT box. It's really good and it's really cheap. And that means that if you've got 4 machines around a patient, you've now got 4 different IoT machines to manage, 4 different IoT clouds to manage, and different firmwares, lots of problems. And what the medical authorities say to the medical machine manufacturers is, we are looking at deciding on who our medical machine manufacturers are for the next 5 years. Those companies that cooperate with our IoT partner, and it doesn't have to be me, it can be anyone, there's lots of people do this, but those machine manufacturers who cooperate with our IoT partner will be looked at more favorably in the future. And it means that the hospital or the medical authority only needs one little gateway. And it's not easy, by the way. In the projects I've been in, you have to get the medical machine manufacturers to cooperate, and that's where the health authority puts pressure on the medical machine manufacturers. And they've all done it. They've all cooperated. They all do it. And for the medical authority and their IT people, it means they've got one little gateway to manage, not 5. For managing the cloud and the data, they've got one cloud to manage, and that can be anything, whether it's Amazon or Google or IBM or Oracle, whoever it is. And And then this is a really important one, where I say less likely to make a mistake. So different medical machines display the data in different ways sometimes. The buttons are in the wrong different places. So with ours, we can set it up so when the doctor or the medical person is looking at the data, it doesn't matter what machine it comes from. They tell us what format they want it in. And when they're going to any machine anywhere, it's always in the format they want. So if Mike wants it in format A and Julia wants it in format B, that's how they see it. And then the fourth one down, no need to send someone to do a reading. So in the projects I've been involved in, they send someone out once a week or whenever to take readings off machines. And that's changing now. So they don't need to do that. So instead, when the person goes to site, it's not to plug a USB dongle into a machine and output some data. It's, hello, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Raji, how are you? How can I help you? And it's a much more meaningful, valuable meeting for everyone. And then no need to drive to a patient. So if you're a doctor and you want to look after your patients, you don't have that hassle, that cost, and that loss of time, because you're much more efficient. Here's the big one, really big one. You're a patient at home and you're on ventilators and things, and you may be in a wheelchair with a mobile IoT hub. You know, when do you start getting frightened? Have you got a little sniffle or a cold, or are you really ill? And how long does it take to send someone to help you? With this sort of technology, the doctor's calling you and saying, hello, Mike, we've noticed that your breathing's a little bit off or something, or your oxygen level's a bit low. You know, what are you doing? So that's huge benefits and challenges. So the top one, that's what I just explained. The IoT company needs to partner with the medical authority and put pressure, to be blunt, put real pressure on the medical machine manufacturers. It always works, and I'll tell you now, you have to get the purchasing department involved from the medical authority and the doctors, because what you're looking at is, it also, by the way, when you use an IoT solution I'm just explained, now I can make machine A look like machine B, look like machine C. So when the purchasing people in the hospital are saying, oh, do we buy a machine A or a machine? It doesn't matter. You know, you can make your choice now based on the features you want, the costs and the reliability of the machines, rather than, oh, we've got 70% machine A, we've got to keep buying machine A. The next thing is what I'm calling incumbent service providers. So what are they? Those are the people that might be delivering gas canisters to the patients. And I know this for a fact. These are the people that are delivering gas canisters to the patient's home or ward, or they're doing basic setup of medical machines. So what you have in these environments is, it might not be IT people that go and set up medical machines. It might be some sort of service provider that does all that. So it's not a challenge, they're your best friend. So if you're a medical authority or an IoT provider, make friends with incumbent service providers and work with the hospital's IT people. Whose budget? So if it's an IoT gateway, is it a medical box? No, it's not. Is it an IT box? Yeah, sort of. But everyone's got tight budgets. So who's going to pay for this? Yeah, it's going to save money and make everything much more efficient and make the patient's outcomes better. But whose budget pays for it? Everyone's busy. So the project that started pre-COVID is going, but only just, and that's because of COVID. Obviously, even the incumbent service providers, the folks that do the gas canister supply, they're busy doing gas canister supply. So everyone right now is busy. And if you imagine any hospital right now, if you say, stop what you're doing, we've got this great idea to use IoT to make you more efficient, they're trying to save people's lives. So everyone that I'm working with realizes we've got a great story, but it's not the right time. Right, questions. So I'm going to stop sharing. Hold on for a minute, please, while I stop sharing. Stop share. And I'll put my video on. So now you're seeing me, and then questions, chat, Q&A.
Yeah, Mike, there are plenty of questions in the Q&A tab. Can you see that?
Right. Okay, so let me run. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me okay, Jonathan?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly. Yes.
Is it okay if I go through these? The first one is at 6:13, so I'm going to run these really fast, okay?
Please do.
So I'll read the question out and then the answer. So this is from David Stewart. Is a database, so by the way, I'm Scottish and I speak quickly. So I'm going to try and speak slowly. You can't go asleep though, that's the deal. Right. Is the database table updated through AI? Jai-Fan, can you switch your video off for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, the first one is, can you all, I hope you can all see me. Is the database table updated through AI or only by modification of the algorithm? So that's not really how it works. So the way it works is that there's something called, the technology I use is something called MQTT. And what that does is the patient's data is sent with what's called a topic. Let's call it a subject. That subject in this case is a patient's random identifier. And the message broker in the cloud that receives that data and says, oh, this random identifier, the cloud at that point does not know who the patient is. What the database does, what the broker does is it sends the, sorry, I'm looking at people's messages coming through, so forgive me if I'm stopping for a minute. Keep the questions coming. The broker routes the data to the database, and the database is then populated, and then the data is then routed through to the application. So no, there's no AI involved in this right now. And AI at that end would mean the machine had to be a medically certified device. So these IoT gateways, just think of them as routers or just as dumb routers, sending data from a medical device to the cloud. The AI would be in the cloud at the back-end application. So I'm going to go, by the way, any questions, you've got my email, hopefully you've seen my email in that presentation. If I don't answer your question properly, I apologize and email me later, because I want to run through all these as fast as I can. So health economist, thanks, evaluation expert at Gmail. Thanks, Peter. Send me an email, mate. Thank you. So that was someone asked me if I had a health economist. No, I don't. And Peter, please email me. Thank you. Hold on. Right. No, so Philip Ashcroft asked a question about, he had a very senior role at the Department of Health a couple of years ago, and he was working with IET on installing IET infrastructure in healthcare. I don't know about it, Philip, so just so you know, I actually volunteered to help the NHS. Because I'm ex-military, they called for people like me about, well, I don't know, 6 to 8 months ago, and I volunteered. And my company supported me, but the NHS at that time was okay. So there's lots going on, and I'm sorry, I don't know about that, Philip. Send me an email, Philip. I'll look into it further, because I'm obviously well connected in IoT, but also to PETRAS and some other organizations. Yeah, so Ben P asked a really, really good question. So this is a really good question, Ben. So Ben's question is, does the no filtering at the gateway clause mean that you can't perform any operations on the edge? What challenges does this present? You're right, Ben. So just to reiterate that, the gateway is just a communications device. I'm playing it down. So I'll tell you what it just is in simple terms, then I'll tell you the very clever bits we do. So, no, the gateway could do filtering, but then it's got to be medically certified. And then if you want a medically certified gateway, it costs a lot of money, it's complicated, and no, we in our company don't want to do it. There might be other companies that do it, I don't know, but they'd have to be medically certified gateways. And then you're letting a little box that costs $500 to make decisions based on what the $150,000 machines are doing connected to the patient and the doctor at the back end. So I'm giving a negative answer because my employer doesn't do that. There was a positive thing that came out of that. Oh yeah, so the positive thing was, on that first project we got involved in pre-COVID, it's in Europe, and when I went there, I went into a big boardroom on my own. My employer said, "You'll never win this, not a hope in hell, but we've got to send you anyway because it's huge." And I went there as a boardroom. There were several medical machine manufacturers there, and they said, "You won't make it work because we've tried so and so and so and so, and they couldn't get it to work." And then they gave us a chance. Within a couple of days, we actually got it working. It worked really, really well. So when I'm playing down the value of our gateway, the really clever thing it does is, imagine you're a patient at home and you're relatively ill, but not ill enough for monitors and things, but you get a phone call every day from the medical authorities saying, hello, Mike, are you okay? The reason they're calling you 3 times a day is just to make sure you're okay and you're moving. So what we do is, at the lower end of the scale on basic sensors, is we put sensors in someone's house that monitor if they switch the kettle on. How many times did they switch the kettle on? Are they using the television? So you're not looking at the person, you've got a little device that connects into the power plug. It's just like an extension plug. It plugs into the kettle, it plugs into the television. You can put them on doors and windows and things. And it measures, yes, Mike has been to the toilet 3 times. We do that on trains and things, actually. Mike's been to the toilet 3 times, he's used the kettle 3 times, so he's okay. So when that medical agent calls that person, it's not, I hate to say it, it's not just to see if he's up and about and alive. You can start to see, in the last week, Mike is not going to the bathroom as often. Mike is not using the kettle as often. He's not eating as much. So it's a different conversation. And we do that with really cheap sensors. We don't provide the sensors, by the way. By the way, this is not a pitch for my employer. So this is I've not mentioned them. This is a general chat about this sort of technology. So hope that answered it, Ben. And again, if I'm not answering them correctly, email me, please. Pandyaraj Krishnan asked, is a gateway linked to a local Wi-Fi router or a standalone device which connects to cloud? Brilliant question. Really, really good question. So most gateway manufacturers have gateways that will connect to Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, LAN, and cellular, and usually a couple different cellular connections. So everything, in other words. And it's very tempting to use the patient's local area network, use their Wi-Fi. It's a nightmare. From experience, it's a nightmare. Patients have, I don't know if you know, but on this session now, I've had several little alerts come up saying my internet quality is not brilliant. But then people go and change internet providers. Our experience, we're happy to do it. I should stop saying our gateways. Most manufacturers' gateways include everything I've just said. So most manufacturer gateways can do what I've said. They can connect to the LAN or a LAN or Wi-Fi or cellular. Most people will use, believe it or not, will use the cellular because it avoids all the Wi-Fi support problems with patients. So I hope that's okay. And I'm Pandaraj. If I'm saying your name wrong, I'm really sorry. Yes, so David Stewart, again, thanks, David. Is the info and IoT gateway packaged with a unique identifier? Yes, so what happens is everything, as the data comes into the gateway, it is secured and encrypted. And as we then upload it to the internet real time, and you're correct, David, it's got a unique identifier, which is that random number, that random digit string that at the back end is aligned with the patient's details. And then Central Methodist Church, Preston, yeah, I agree. So, okay, here's a question. What considerations are given to cybersecurity of medical data? Malicious deletion or substitution of data could have serious consequences. Yeah, so this starts all the way at the back-end application. So we don't do that, but when you're certifying and providing, so we work with people that do this, and at the back end, even the people doing system administration and changes and updating those databases I just mentioned, they have to be rigorously vetted, and whatever they do must be rigorously controlled. But back to the area that I work at, so I'm working at the other end, at the gateway and the sensors. So there's something called TPM2, which is trusted. By the way, I apologize, I'm running so fast. It's called Trusted Platform Module T2.0 TPM2, and that is what's called the hardware root of trust. And anything you try and do in that device is securely restricted. And then you have what's called public key certificates. So what all not everyone does TPM2. The more established firms, manufacturers do. So you should ask for TPM2. The next thing is security certificates. So when you're connecting to the cloud. So that's the sort of technology that the military use and banks use, and you should use it. It makes sure that the device is known by the cloud, and then use secure connections, what's called TLS in this case, to secure the data from the machine. There's something else. So what you can also do is, I'll give you an example of a train, because it's the one I use often. So some manufacturers put devices on trains. Let's say you've got a device, something on the train is saying opening the door. It's trying to send a command to say open the door. What these gateways will do is they'll have multiple sensors. One is measuring the engine revolutions, one's measuring the wheel revolutions, one's maybe using GPS, saying my speed's 60 miles an hour, and the fourth one is saying open the door. So when I said they don't do any remote compute, what they do is they say, hold on a minute, that doesn't make sense. So take that to into medical world. If you connected 3 or 4 machines, and 3 of the 4 say the patient is really okay, but the 4th one says the patient's really ill, we'll still send all that data back, but we'll also send a message saying, hold on, machine number 4 doesn't make sense. Please, will you send it back with a level of just a separate alarm saying, here's all the data, but by the way, 3 machines say this and the 4th one says that. And then Michael Jennings. Yeah, good point. So Michael Jennings is asking, to what extent does IoT assist alarm fatigue? Will the clinicians eventually actually take heed of sensor warnings? Yeah, absolutely correct. So what happens, Michael, is that we transmit 100% of everything back. It's the back-end application that sets the thresholds. So it's when we work with people, we just send everything. So whether the machine says everything's fine or he's really poorly, we don't analyze that, we send it all back. So it's the clinicians and the other application provider that sets those alarms. But I totally get what you're saying, Michael, good point. So what David Stewart's asked, does the system have dual or treble resilience in event of failure or error in equipment? The answer is some parts do, but no. So some systems have battery backup, some have dual modems, dual SIMs, some systems, I'm trying not to talk about my employer, okay? So some systems have what's called a watchdog. What the watchdog does is it runs a program internally that checks itself all the time and says, am I okay, am I okay, am I okay? And if anything starts to go wrong, it sends alerts back. So remember, these are being used in places where there isn't one, where if there's a problem, either the patient calls by telephone or if it's in a hospital, someone hits an alarm bell. So don't see this as replacing anything, see it as an additional type of service. So good question, David. No, they don't. There'll always be I think there'll always be a single point of failure unless you put 2 machines at their house with different power supplies and battery backup. But no, it's a good question. Good question. Hi, Salim. So Salim's question is, the patient user interface in the home, will a special simple device be envisioned for those who have never used IT devices? So it's really good. And what happens in the projects I'm involved in is because this is pre-COVID, remember, the first project, a lot of those were elderly people, even older than me, and who had breathing difficulties or some other really bad condition, and who might not be as IT savvy as other people, and they don't touch the systems, they don't touch them. So when the same sort of people, I mentioned the incumbent service provider, so people that might provide the medical machines who set them up, or provide the gas canisters, or what's called consumables, things that the patient needs and uses in asthma gas canisters and things, those sort of spray things. So they'll go to site and set them up. The patient never touches it. These sort of gateways do not even have an on-off switch. They're the size of a small book, and they just run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Some manufacturers' products have been running for 17 years. You have to do upgrades, but they just run. So no, the patient user interface at home, it's up. So one authority I'm working with, they have got an interface for the patient. So when the patient starts using the service, the sort of things they see are, do you want to buy some more wet wipes or whatever it is? And they don't generally, it's up to the medical authority what they show them, but I'm not aware of them ever showing them any sort of medical information about themselves. Having said that, talk to me later about blockchain. I know an organization in Europe who are looking at saying the same technology, the patient should own the data about themselves, not the medical authority. And they're using blockchain to enforce that. So the patient's data is their data, and use blockchain to enforce who owns that data or data. So hope that's okay. Brian Heathcote. Personal contact is vitally important to many elderly people who are ill, possibly confined to home. How is IoT going to deal with this? Really good, because you can use IoT to stop sending people to site. And if you do that, then the poor patient, he or she's left on their own. So what we're seeing with the projects we're involved in, as I said before, what happens is that someone goes to site who are just going to site with a USB dongle, plug it and saying, hold on, Bill, I'm busy. And they're spending all the time doing techie stuff. They're plugging the dongle into the machine, downloading, I'll talk to you later. And the guy wants some, the elderly patient wants some company, and this person's ignoring them because they're doing the technical stuff, downloading the data. So, and similarly, when I said a central agent calls a patient, they're really calling to see if he or she is up and about or alive. If you're using IoT, you know they're up and about, you know they've boiled the kettle 4 times. Now when the agent calls them, it's, hello, Mike, how are things? And if Mike's not used the kettle for 2 days, you know there's something strange going on. So you're right. You could use IoT to stop the visits, to stop the phone calls. That's not very nice. So the way we say it is use IoT so that when the person goes to the person's house, when the assistant goes to the person's house, rather than playing with a USB dongle, they're talking to the patient. Thanks, Brian. So Central Methodist Church Preston, is there an opportunity here for technical diagnostics to be sent to preempt breakdowns? Brilliant question. So this is the area that most IoT gateway manufacturers start their business on. So you plug the gateway into devices, whether it's in a factory or a medical environment, and you monitor them. So as well as getting the patient data, you're monitoring the machine. How hot is it? What's its firmware level, etc. And you're always looking at the machine to see what its condition is. And that goes, so with most medical manufacturers, with most IoT gateway manufacturers, you send the medical data to the medical cloud. And then what you're talking about here is Central Methodist Church Preston. You send the machine maintenance data either to the Central Medical Authority IT people, or you can send it to whichever support organization it is. And then you can sort of say, by the way, your CPU is running a little bit hot or whatever, or you're at firmware level, this or that. You can then do cross-references with what's called CVE, which is the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures List. If you don't know what that is, Google for CVE plus MITRE, and it's a global list used by all the big banks and firms that tell you about all the known vulnerabilities on technology. So yes, you're allowed to do that because you're not dealing with medical information. So yes, you can definitely do diagnostics on all the medical machines. So thank you. Sorry, Brian, I don't know. I wanted my face to be on here, so I don't know if you can see me or not, because I've got Andrew Caldos up as the speaker on a black screen. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not the host.
Well, I can see you, Mike. It's not a problem. So
okay, thanks, Brian. So hopefully you can see me. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. I was getting a bit lonely there. Kenneth Harden, what evidence is there of cost effectiveness of remote monitoring? It's a good one, Kenneth. I don't know, to be blunt. So the thing, I pulled up some slides from PwC, because what I found, I do quite a few presentations, and when you start Googling for IoT and saving money or whatever, you will get swamped with promotions from companies that try to sell you gateways or mobile SIM cards and things. So what I do is I go to the PwC, Foresters, all the, okay, they're consultancies trying to sell you services, but you tend to get some reasonably good, I'm not going to call it, get some really good information from those sort of sites, is all I can tell you on that one, Kenneth. No, I find it really hard to find that sort of information. I'm sorry. Peter West, how are you estimating the resources needed for real-time monitoring, maybe automatic and response? So I don't know. So what's happening with the projects I'm involved in is that the data information is past the medical application, and the medical authorities and practitioners are viewing that data. And I don't know is the answer. I guess my common sense, I guess rather than walking around wards, just meeting people, they can, before they depart on the walk around the ward, a medical practitioner can do a quick review of everyone's condition, or he or she can see what they're like before he goes round. But no, I'm sorry, I don't know that. I apologise. Anonymous attendee, how do you address the convergence of cybersecurity between IT and OT? Brilliant question. So I also work with industrial organisations, and OT, anonymous attendee, must be a techie. You must be in the industry somewhere. So for those who don't know, IT, information technology, is typically things like Cisco networks, Hewlett-Packard servers. It's your computers and your servers and your IT infrastructure. OT is what's called operational technology. So what you have is, think of, forgive me for moving off medical for a minute, think of a factory with a production line. If this is IT, if you can't do your billing, let's say your billing system goes down, your accounting system goes down on Tuesday, and it's the middle of the month, and you can't issue any bills. Well, it's a minor hassle. You can't issue bills, but you'll fix it tomorrow. Bit of a problem. That's an IT problem. Here's another IT problem. Your email system's down. Your email's not working. It's a bit of a problem. It's quite annoying. It's going to be fixed in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Now think you're a factory and you're producing widgets, and your widget machine stops working. That's operational technology. That's when the ND comes down and is absolute hell, because the fact that you can run without your billing system for a while, you can run without your email for a while, but if you're a factory producing widgets and your widgets aren't being produced, that's when it's really serious. So that's what anonymous attendees talking about, is the demarcation, convergence. It's politics. What you have everywhere is the OT people tend to be undervalued, I would suggest, personally. But if their stuff goes faulty, that's when the managing director goes to the shop floor. That's when it's things to do with SCADA and things like that and utilities and stuff. When the OT stops working, that's when people get seriously upset, because people are dying. It's serious. IT is computers. OT to me is very serious. And the conversion, anonymous attendee, is I'm seeing it everywhere. It's a huge problem, because the OT people and the IT people don't always partner like they should. They've got different skill sets. You can probably see from my photo, my image, I'm not a young guy, and OT people tend to be older. IT, unfortunately, tends to be a lot of outsourced IT, and then you've got different drivers. IT tends to be, it's a commoditized thing, drive the costs down, whereas OT, if it goes faulty, the factory's not making widgets or someone's dying. So yeah, it's a political problem, anonymous attendee. I personally think that. Dibam Bhattacharya, and again, sorry if I'm getting your name wrong, I apologize. How does IoT data get to patients' permanent records? So that's at the back end. So in the projects I'm involved in, the data goes to the back end, and it either goes to a big computer type company that's partnering with the medical authority, and they might host the application on their behalf, or another project that I'm involved in is a specialist medical provider that's partnering with that country, and that data goes into the medical authority, and the application provider is just providing the application. So that's how it gets to the patient's permanent records. Hope that explains it. Again, if these are not right, email me afterwards, please. I'm running through these really fast. Gordon, surely you couldn't cover a large multiple flow hospital with one gate. Oh, good point. Okay, so Gordon, good question. And I'm sorry I didn't explain it right. So Gordon's question is, surely you couldn't cover a large multiple flow hospital with one gateway box. I assume the IoT sensors are using radio to get to the gateway. Okay, good point. Right, let me, couple things. So our IoT gateways are usually one gateway. Sorry, most IoT gateway manufacturers' systems are supplied one gateway to maybe 3 or 4. The gateway's at the patient's bedside. It's 2 yards away from the patient. So if that patient's got one medical machine, it's a one-to-one basis. If that patient's got 5 or 10 medical machines around him or her, it's connected to 5 or 10 machines. You could, so when I talked about RFID, so that's how you monitor the patients, so connect to the patients. And when it's at home, you have one gateway connected to 4 or 5 medical machines in that patient's house, plus maybe radio, Bluetooth type things. You could have one gateway monitoring more devices. So in an RFID world where you want to track assets, you could track more assets using probably it'd most likely be RFID and Bluetooth type sensors, but that needs quite a lot of surveys of the premises. So Gordon, you're absolutely right, and I apologize for not explaining that very well. I do talk too fast. I probably went through a few things, I'm sorry. Simon H, are the incumbent medical machine manufacturers moving to a product as a service to the medical industry to retain the market share? Yes. So what's happening is, and I'm seeing this a lot, so in the olden days, the medical machine manufacturers would sell a box and they'd have a maintenance contract, or they'd lease a box. Simon H, you must be involved in this. So what they're all doing now is saying, you don't need to pay 50,000 euros for a box. It's only, whatever it is, so much a month. And that includes IoT or the data transmission service. Watch out, watch out, watch out. What you've just done is you've got 4 medical machines around a patient, and you've got 4 different clouds to manage. So, if you want to go that way, go that way. But what I'm suggesting is any IoT manufacturer, like any of the main ones, would, well, because those people like me sell those things, we say it's better. But we can make box A look like box D, and you've got one IoT thing to manage. Alan Finnerty from Medovate. Oh God, HL7. I mentioned HL7. What ISO standards govern the infrastructure, hardware, software that medical device manufacturers should follow? So right. So I'm not an expert in HL7. So HL7 is so for those that are slightly technical, you probably have heard of JSON or protobuf or XML. So forget medical for a minute. In the normal computer world, if you want to send data around networks, you'll have what's called a data markup language. So when that data comes into a device, you use something like XML or JSON or protobuf to mark up that data in a format that can be recognized at the other end. And so the benefits of JSON and XML is it's what's called human readable. So programmers can program and read in it pretty well. So you'll have things like patient's name, blood pressure, temperature, etc. And you put that into XML and you send it to the other end. And programmers at either end can understand it, and it's ingested that way into the database. HL7 is what's called ISO layer 7. So in the ISO layer, right at the very bottom at 1, you have like the physical interface. Is it a D shape or is it a round shape? And as you go up to level 2s and 3s, that's what's called the MAC layer. And then layer 3 is the routing layer, and you go all the way up. But layer 7 is the application. So layer 7 is, and I don't know a lot about this, Alan, layer 7 is the back end where hospitals and medical practitioners exchange data about the patient, their information, the records. So I don't know the ISO standard. So for those that don't know, Google for HL7 in medical, it's a standard used in the back end at an application level. I never get involved in that end, Alan. I'm not dismissing your question, I just don't know much about it. Paul Sheridan, have you attempted to leverage GSI global referencing, which is attempted in healthcare? No, I've not. No, the answer is no. And no, I've not. What I do is I tend to be driven by, I work with some very large global IT systems integrators and large, I don't just do medical, by the way, I'm involved in defense, industry, utilities and medical. And no, I don't. I tend to be reactive to what the systems integrator says or the customer. So no, I'm sorry, Paul, I tend to be reactive. What I do is, we have some really good technical people. Sorry, I keep saying our company. My strategy is not like that. I apologize, Paul. Derek, is there a standard used for device to IoT gateway? Oh, I love this one. Derek, I love you. So Derek said, is there a standard or standards used for device to IoT gateway to network? Right, so let's start at the device. So let's call it a medical device to anyone's IoT gateway to the network. So the device to IoT gateway is where the medical machine manufacturers might have what's called a TCP/IP, that's like an Ethernet type cable, or they might have a USB cable, or they might have a serial cable, they're the normal, or they might even Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. So anyway, the connection thing from the medical device to the IoT gateway is something you would recognize and look at and understand. But the medical machine manufacturers use their own protocols. But hey, the chips inside those medical boxes, they didn't make them. They came from chip manufacturers. All they've done is they have made it, maybe by accident. I'm a bit of a cynic here. Careful what I say because it's been recorded. The medical machine manufacturers will send their data probably in it might be in a proprietary way. And if they will not let you reverse engineer that data or the format, I was actually saying I can't reverse engineer it, but if you looked at my LinkedIn, I've got some tools where I can reverse engineer. If it's encrypted, I can't do anything with it. But if it's just reverse engineer, if it's just on what's called byte swapping or bit swapping, or use a different number of stop bits, start bits, or parity bits, I can reverse engineer that, and so could anyone who's got the time and the capability. So device to IoT gateway, if you don't have their cooperation, that's a huge problem. The medical authority needs to put pressure on them, like I said, which is, hello, medical machine manufacturer, if you want to be one of our preferred suppliers moving forward, please would you cooperate with our IoT gateway firm? That's the safest way. Right, gateway to network. So there's several standards. So I'm going to talk about some public clouds for a minute. So the big ones are Amazon, or what we call AWS, Google, IBM, Microsoft Azure. They're the big ones, and they have two standards. The first one they offered was something called MQTT. That was invented by two companies. One that is co-developed. So MQTT was co-developed by the company I work for, along with IBM, and it's specifically designed for what's called resource-constrained networks, i.e. this. So and the other one's called HTTP, which is normal. The people who have grown up on website designs and designing games will understand HTTP. If you want to know which is better, write this down, please. And those doing CPDs, there's a question on this in your exam later on. So you have to pay, all those doing CPDs, you better wake up now and write this question down. So Google, what is faster, MQTT or HTTP? So what is faster, MQTT or HTTP? you'll get answers back like 20 to 25 times. Sorry, MQTT is 20 to 25 times. Some say 90 times faster. So MQTT is, and sorry. The reason I mentioned AWS and Google and IBM and Azure is they all supported MQTT first and then HTTP. Microsoft Azure supports at least one other standard. I think it's CoAP. But generally, also, if you wanted to build your own environment on your premises, then MQTT has lots of publicly available open source solutions. So yeah, I'm a bit openly biased. I like MQTT, and I think all big enterprise customers, I'm working with some of the biggest firms in the world, I don't know anyone that's not using MQTT. You might use REST APIs at the back end to connect between servers and apps, but not what you've asked about, Derek. So medical device to gateway, you need to use the medical authority to put pressure on the medical machine manufacturer to cooperate. And it's not simple, by the way. Other people tried to do what we've done and failed. And then gateway to network, the most popular ones are MQTT and HTTP, but Microsoft Azure supports at least one other one. I think it's CoAP, I think. Kenneth Harden, Microsoft has achieved virtual standardization of word processing. Is there a need of medical data exchange? I'd say that goes back to HL7, because when I've looked at HL7. Obviously, I don't know about it. I've looked at it, so I'm used to looking at code like XML or JSON that I can sort of read and sort of understand. I can read it hex. If you look at my LinkedIn, I do stuff on hex where I reverse engineer stuff, and I sort of get to know what different commands are. But I think there's too much invested in technologies and people's back ends and stuff. If you go to a hospital and say, that system you've had for 10 years, can we change it? So I think it's little bits at a time. So Kenneth, good question. It's outside my knowledge. I don't know about that one, sorry. Michael W. Will there be data protocol harmonization? Oh, so Michael W, good question. Will there be data protocol harmonization, or will OEMs monopolize their own systems? I've sort of hinted that I can get into trouble for some of the things that I might hint at. Or imply. So if you're a medical manufacturer company, so Michael, I think they should be. Michael W, I think they should be. But if you're a medical manufacturer and you're dominant in your marketplace of a type of device, do you want to open it up to competition? No, you don't. You're going to keep it, you're going to block everyone as much as you can. And when new competitors come along, you'll discount your prices and have my IoT gateway for nothing. You know, they'll throw stuff in. So Michael W, yeah, I would love it if the OEMs agreed on a protocol, and they've done that at the back end with HL7. That's not them, that's application providers and the medical authorities, but it's not in their interest to do that. And that's why you need the medical authority, purchasing folks, management to put pressure on them to cooperate with any IoT gateway manufacturer. Another Michael, you mentioned patient at home. What about people who only have an ordinary telephone? Does the NHS supply all the necessary equipment? I don't know. So what we're doing, we're not, the two major projects I'm involved in are in Europe, I shouldn't say in Europe, not the UK. They're not in the UK, and they're for huge European countries. And although I volunteered to help the NHS, they didn't take that for nothing, by the way, back in April, May or something. They didn't take me up on the offer. Although one of the companies making the ventilators at the time, one of the biggest, they make Hoovers and stuff as well, or not the wrong brand name. They wanted me to get involved, and the NHS said no, so whatever. Anyway, so patients at home with ordinary telephone. With most gateways, you would supply, the gateway is supplied with a cell phone, a SIM card and a modem internally, and so it's out of the box, it works. So when we set things up, they work out of the box. And there's things on there, there's lots of gotchas, like different countries, different cell towers, different providers. You need not one cell phone antenna, but two. I can explain that later to people. But when you're setting these things up, you need to be careful that the technology is set up, works out of the box, so that person, that carer, that medical incumbent supplier needs to just take out the box, plug it in, and it just works. E&P, what is the law legislation that dictates that all data has to be transferred to the database, please? Context, I'm investigating IoT for a remote monitoring of users, but in pattern of life to ensure people are eating, drinking, etc., rather than monitoring vital medical conditions. So I've got an email me because I had to do this for our company, for my employer, and you have to find companies that get involved in the medical certification of devices. It costs like 300 or 600 euros. So what you do is you send them an email of what you're trying to do, and they will then tell you if it needs to be medically certified. So for our environment, for the two big projects I'm involved in, we had to do it the way I've described. But E&P, if you email me, I will send you the name of the company. I won't because we're in that country, then you know what country it's in. Ian, what you got to do is Google for medical certification consultancies for medical devices, and there's different classes. It's like, I forget what they are, but classes 1, 2, and 3, etc. And they will, I can't give you the ones that I've worked on because they're country specific. Sorry. Paul Sheridan, in terms of IoT and statewide communication, site-wide communication, I think, so there's, I'll guess, my fault, Paul, I probably ran through something too quickly. So Paul Sheridan said, in terms of IoT and site-wide communication, so generally, so most IoT gateways from anyone are installed locally, physically close to that patient, because the machines normally connect to them by USB, some sort of cable usually, although most IoT manufacturer systems can communicate on Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, but usually it's one gateway per patient, usually. Thanks, David, for your comment. Thank you very much. John Madison, reposted from the chat window into Q&A, what sort of range do you get from the device sensors to the gateways? Is that using Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, LoRa, or some other technology? So, and again, it's a good question because I've moved on since then, but I'll answer it. So most gateway firms can communicate via all of those. Not all can do LoRa. The company I work for can, but not all can do LoRa. And so Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, LoRa, or some other technology. The range is subject to the building structure, etc. But again, we tend to put the gateway in the patient, if it's at home in the house, and we'd even put two there, or a rebroadcasting station. If they've got, some of the people have a gateway where it's on their wheelchair, or you can have a MQTT client installed in the mobile phone. So if the patient's poorly, but is well enough to go out somewhere with a mobile phone, that mobile phone can remotely send data back about the patient. Depends what they're wearing. So again, some IoT manufacturers have got wearables, and those wearables can connect via Bluetooth to the mobile phone. That mobile phone then sends an MQTT signal to the cloud and then back down to the medical application at the back end. Philip Ashcroft. So Philip's just, if you can post that for everyone, Philip, if you've not already done that. So Philip's found the IoT guidance document. Brilliant, Philip, thank you. So I think he's posted that. Brilliant, thanks, Philip. John Madison reposted from the Q&A, how much correlation processing aggregation of the data is done from multiple sources? Are there any AI type optimization that can be done remotely, proactively to value add? And again, that's done at the back end. So, and again, forgive me for saying most IoT manufacturers, because I don't want to pitch my employer, that's wrong, that's not what we do in IoT. So if I'm in the industrial world, what I would do is we have gateways that have, I'm looking to the side. So here's a bit of fun. This is what's called a Jetson Nano. That's a GPU and CPU powered little car that I'm working on right now. So what I'm coming to is, for a few £100, you can buy a GPU. Well, if it's a GPU in a gateway, it's probably more like £600 or £800 minimum, more like maybe 1,000. And what it does is these AI type things learn. So if I go back to a machine environment for a minute, well, if we go back to a medical person, a medical environment, that machine will learn how Mike is responding to drugs and how he's breathing, how Mike is throughout the day, and it learns what is a good condition of Mike. This is a good condition of Mike. And then when Mike starts to deviate, so we're not talking about readings, because not everyone has the same oxygen level, not everyone has the same pulse rate, but it learns that, okay, Mike's long-term sick, he's quite poorly, and his condition is within these parameters is normal. If it then changes, the machine goes, hold on, there's something going on here. Now, unless your device is medically certified, you can't do that at the edge, you do that in the center. However, in industrial environments, we do that. This machine is running well, temperature, pressure, etc. is fine, and you learn what's good. So that's pretty good. I do some work with oil and gas. So they call it a drill string. So when a drill's going into the ground under the ocean, if you stop that drill because it's something getting a bit hot, it might cost you £100,000 to restart that drill bit with your drill string. However, if you keep drilling, because you don't know, you just keep drilling, it might cost you $250,000. Whereas if you use AI at the edge and you learn, if you've got 100 of these drill strings around the world, you learn what's a good profile, and you learn that's not a problem. And someone else talked about preventive maintenance. You can say in a month's, I've got customers that do this. They say in a month's time, I will need to change something. I've got customers that have these gateways of big, really, really big boats, big ships, and they don't do oil pressure. They do what's called oil conditioning. So that sensor costs about £1,000. No, we don't sell them, and it monitors the condition of the oil. And then when you've got a big ship and it's got, I don't know how many thousands of gallons of oil in the engines, you say, I don't need to change that 2,000 gallons yet, I'll change it in a month's time. Huge savings. So AI can be done at the cloud. If you do it at the edge in the medical environment, you have to be medically certified. What are the most used sensors for IoT in healthcare? Everything. So, sorry, that's from Ashlyn Ilyasi. What are the most used sensors for IoT in the healthcare? Sensors. Okay, so oxygen levels and things. So if you go to Amazon, you can buy these little oxygen sensors. Specifically, they're about £30 right now, and you plug them into put them on your finger, and it measures the oxygen level in your finger. So I guess the answer is I don't know. There's just so many. If your question was about brands, I don't know. If it's about sensor types, it's everything. Ashkan, absolutely everything. Ashkan, everything. So this is from Bree Uzi. Are there special biological sensors deployed to monitor the patient's health status? And again, yes, it can be. So when some of the things I've done in Europe, we've had the customer supplies someone to set that. I'm laughing because I'm remembering the environments where we're plugging sensors into the ears and places in the body, real time, to then display that data through the cloud back into a projector in that organization's room. So yeah, they're pretty much now whatever you can think of has got some way of connecting that data from a sensor via Bluetooth or a little cable or something to the internet or through a gateway type device. An anonymous attendee, do you see this technology ultimately reducing home health care visits? So again, you could, and it's a good question. So like I said before, if you use this technology, you could say, I don't need to send people to site to plug a USB dongle in. I would say that that's not nice. You're losing a lot of value. Instead of sending someone just to plug a USB dongle in, now you can send someone to site to say, hello, John, how are you? How's things? And add some value. Terry Bloom, is the Wi-Fi nightmare caused by the line quality or something else? So the Wi-Fi quality nightmare might be this connection, if that's what you're talking about, because I've had some messages here, my quality is not so good. Or if the nightmare is due to our experience is that we've had this everywhere, that people, for some reason, don't like using the patient's Wi-Fi. I don't know what it is. It's everyone if everyone tells you something, I just say, okay, I'm fine. And they tell me that they don't want to use it. It causes password problems, password reset problems. And especially in patients' homes, in some countries, these machines are there for a year longer. And then so they're not used for that. That was for Terry Bloom. John Madison, are you using standard off-the-shelf devices that anyone could purchase when instrumenting someone's home to capture their events? Boiled the kettle. Yeah. So John, if you email me, I'll send you the data. So John Madison said, are you using standard off-the-shelf devices that anyone could purchase when instrumenting someone's home to capture their events, such as boiling the kettle, movements, opening the door, using the toilet? So the answer is yes. So I'll give you one example of boiling the kettle. It's an adapter that looks like a 3-pin plug that you plug your kettle into, then into the wall. It's got a little Wi-Fi circuit in it, and it sends, every time the kettle is switched on, it sends a trigger to the gateway saying the kettle's being used. And in the other ones, it's all the same. There's lots of stuff, motion sensors, etc. So John, if you email me, if you can't find it, email me and I'll send some information on that. They're not being made by my employer, they're made by other people. Anonymous attendee, can the sensors be set up so that the system can be configured to automatically call the emergency services? So the gateway would not do that, because then it's got to have a threshold set that says I'm going to call the emergency services, and that means the device has to be medically certified. So no, it's at the back end that's done. Anonymous attendee, do you have any predictions on how this may help to reduce admissions to hospital and ease the burden on the NHS? So that goes back to the PwC. They've got some figures there showing. And again, if you contact Jayafang or Andrew, they will give you permission to download this presentation, I'm sure. But in there is info from PwC about the benefits that the customers that they're doing consultancy for, the benefits they're seeing. So they're quoting to 33 to 40-something% benefits in different areas. That was from anonymous attendee. Salim Hakim. Hi, Salim, I know you. Thank you for joining. So redundancy is not used in favor of self-checks. No, it's not that way. It's just most companies supply gateways where there's not a gateway already. So the situation right now is there's no gateway and there's no online reporting. It's just, either in a hospital, there's no online reporting, and an alarm goes off, or a doctor sees something when he's going round, or there might be some sort of network alerts, but it's different in every hospital, and it's different for every machine. Or if a patient's at home, there might be some sort of alarm system connected to a phone line that triggers an alarm somewhere. So no, our systems are usually set up, or IoT gateways are usually set up so that they are a single point of failure, but it's something you don't have right now. I don't know what our MTBF, our mean time between failures is. It's like 1 in I don't know how many years. We don't, I keep saying these gateways have been used in this industry for a long time. They generally don't have an on-off switch, and they're designed to run 24/7, 365 in factories. So they don't have moving parts usually. There's no fan, so they're quiet. So things that go faulty are moving parts. Fans stop spinning, the thing gets hot. Most manufacturers don't have spinning fans. The machines are designed to run 24/7 for years. So generally, no, there's no redundant systems, it's only one. And the self-checks is a bonus. What that self-check is quite important, because not all IoT gateway firms do this. Some have got a watchdog that checks, is my Wi-Fi okay? If your mobile signal, although you might think your mobile's connected, but no, what the watchdog does, it says, hold on, no data, I've not got my heartbeat from the center, so it reboots the modem or changes the SIM card to another SIM card that's in the machine. So I hope that's okay. Kenneth, a certain manufacturer, Kenneth Harden, said, what machine has been working for 17 years? My employers had machines working for 17 years, so email me and I'll give information. It's true. Salim, thank you for that. Ian Simpson, to avoid the need for Fitbits. So Ian Simpson, to avoid the need for Fitbits, etc., are you able to non-contact measure pulse rates, etc.? I don't think so. So in the hospital environments, in the medical environments I'm working in, they tend to be some sort of thing that touches the person. Fitbits, I bought a couple of those things to try and reverse engineer them and hack them. That was it. And you had to, I've got several mobile phones, and I had to give the Fitbit manufacturer full access to everything on my mobile phone. And when I tried to restrict it, it wouldn't install. So I just didn't, I just chucked it, you know? So I'm very worried about these Fitbits because they want access to all your world on your phone. So I wouldn't use them personally. Someone that wants access to all my data, all my everything, I wouldn't install it. So Ian Simpson, can you measure pulse? Ian Simpson said, can we measure pulse rate? Yeah, from video. I don't know, Ian. Sorry, don't know. You're way ahead of me there, way ahead of me. So I don't know. It's not. I'm not being dismissive. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm thinking with AI and all that, you can probably do lots of stuff, but I don't know. Dave Perton, has there been any studies of patient outcomes and patient satisfaction? Again, that's going back to the analyst reports. So email me, because again, I don't want to keep talking about my manufacturer, but we've been doing this they're on our company website, that we've been doing this sort of stuff for years. So the IET is a voluntary organization. I must not promote my company. If you email me, I'll give you some links after this. That was from David Perton. Chris Watts, what happens if the patient wants to go for a walk at the hospital? In the hospital, does the gateway cover device handoff between gateways? So a couple of things. What we've been doing is how we have one gateway at the patient's bedside, which is physically connected, because some machines, some medical machines are best connected to on a physical cable, and we put a gateway there. That we have another gateway. I'll talk about the wheelchair, then I'll go into walking in a minute. Then we can have another wheelchair, another gateway in a wheelchair, and we can connect those two together on Wi-Fi. One can be the client, one can be the access point. And then when you're walking around, you can have if they've got a mobile phone, they could have one of our gateways or a gateway type device mobile powered, but we suggest a mobile phone, Android or Apple, and it has what's called an MQTT client in there, and that's not got a medical application. All it's doing is connecting to that patient, whatever sensors they have, and it sends the data to the application rather than going through the gateway. I hope that's okay. You could have mesh gateways. So with Bluetooth 5, so this is taking on to Chris Watt's question about could you walk around hospital? You could have mesh gateways using what's called Bluetooth 5 and have a mesh network in hospital and start passing it all off. We've not been asked to do that yet. And again, I apologize, I tend to be reactive to what happens is the medical authority and the systems integrator tend to operate at that level, Chris. And the company I work for tends to operate at what's called the message broker, the MQTT cloud access point, all the way down to the sensor. We don't sell the sensors. We do quite a small part really, but I think it's good to understand it end to end. So good question, Chris. I don't know if I answered it very well. If not, email me, sorry. Emma, can I throw some light on IoT security at the edge in the healthcare sector? So believe it or not, most medical devices, well, some medical devices are next to a patient, so you don't think about data coming out of that machine as needing to be encrypted. It tends to come out clear, believe it or not. Well, after all, the patient's in a hospital and he or she's plugged into a machine in some way, so that you don't expect someone to say, excuse me, patient, and start hacking the machine. The problem is, those machines are also being deployed in people's houses or at small hospices or very small medical places, and they're not secured, if you know what I mean. No, well, they're not. And so by using our device, by using an IoT gateway, most IoT gateways will secure the data. As soon as it touches that gateway, it's secured and encrypted at rest. That means when it touches a device, it's secured. And then also, when it's transmitted over the internet, it's encrypted again before it's sent, and it's sent via secure connection, excuse me. Secure connection using something called TLS. So using a gateway should make the edge security better, Emma. Some some medical device manufacturers do have the ability to encrypt the data, and that's not a problem as long as they send it to the gateway manufacturer with like a header on it and information that lets us take that as like what's called a blob, a binary large object, and send it across the web. So I hope that's okay. Again, if not, email me. Thanks, David. So David Stewart, I think he's done some Googling. He says MQTT is 93 times quicker than HTTP. So again, I found that it's 93. So the figures I've found are 20 to 25 to 90 odd. So thanks, David. So you'll find that. And what I do when I go into a meeting, I go into board level meetings, and someone else mentioned IT and OT. And what I do is I say, hello, pleased to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And I say, just before we begin, I want to understand, I don't say this, but I want to understand what technical level people are at. And I say, can I ask you if you know what MQTT is? And I get the looks of dumb, I don't know what MQTT is. I say, do you know what HTTP is? And the techie goes, yeah, I know HTTP. And you go, oh my God. You know, he does games, or he's a website developer. So it's tricky. What I've got to do, David, is explain to them like this. Just do a quick search. I know your background's websites. Okay, so MQTT is designed for resource-constrained devices, but I don't want to make an enemy of that techie. Okay, but thanks, David, for that. Chris Shepherd. Do I have any idea of how many hospitals or trusts are currently using IoT technology? Chris, I don't, I'm sorry. So again, I apologize, I'm reactive. Most of my projects are actually not even in the UK. No, they tend to be in Europe and the Middle East. So I don't know why that is actually, it's just one of those things. David Ferron, has there been consideration for open protocol on the gateway? It's a similar question before, but it's a brilliant question. David Fearon, has there been consideration for an open protocol on the gateway connecting the various medical machine manufacturers' equipment, i.e. not limited to a single supplier on the medical world? Is this not a consideration? So in the industrial world, I'm going to go back to 1979. So for those that are slightly technical, something called Modbus. I'm explaining this for a good reason. It's the same thing happened in the industrial world, and back in 1979, a company called Modicon released their serial communication standard to the world for free, and everyone jumped on it and used it, and that's now called Modbus. And it's not 100% correctly implemented, but it's a good starting point. In the medical world, David, unfortunately, they've not done that. But as I say, they tend to use a USB cable, serial, TCP or Wi-Fi. Modicon Schneider, yeah. Sorry, thanks, Paul Sutton. Yeah, Modicon got bought by Schneider. Thank you. Absolutely correct. And Schneider's very good. So Modicon, I'm going to beat you on this one, Paul. So I think Schneider have implemented their own version of Modbus, I think. So what you'll find is, when I say Modbus is a protocol, and I'm in dangerous waters now, and Modbus is relevant because some medical machines use Modbus. And I'm not Googling, this is from memory. I think Schneider have their own version of Modbus. And what you'll find is, although I call it a protocol, I think if you look up all the RFCs, you'll see that Modbus isn't really tied down that well, and people sometimes don't implement it the same way. Paul's laughing, yeah, thanks, Paul. So you'll find that Modbus is very common, but what I'm coming to, and the question about medical standards, it would be wonderful if the medical world adhered to it, but what I'm seeing is no, there's just, I feel sorry for anyone in the medical world because they're struggling so much right now. This is, I feel sorry for them. Sorry, David Fearon, has there been consideration? That's the same one. Sorry. I think I've run out.
Run out of breath, have you?
I have. I'm having some water now. Hold on.
All right. Okay, Mike. Well, it was fantastic. Your stamina, you see, it's just amazing what you have done here today.
Thank you.
Not only the presentation, but these 50 odd questions to answer.
Yeah, and please, if I've not answered them correctly, I'm not saying I have, because what I find sometimes is I think I've answered a question and someone goes, that's not what I asked. So if I didn't answer it correctly, please email me. I didn't duck any questions. It's just, I'll put my email in chat because someone asked for it. Chat. To all attendees.
Okay, Mike. So I'm sure you receive loads of emails, and I have already received quite a few for CPDs. So I think
we've got to ask them the question now, Andrew.
Sorry?
You've got to ask them the question so they get their CPD.
Well, yeah. Well, the CPD comes if you send me an email.
Yeah.
Just to let me know that you need a CPD, and we generate the CPD and send it over to anybody who asks for the CPD. I received already quite a few emails for requesting
good.
CPD. That's excellent. So was your talk and this whole presentation, Mike. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure that the thing to do, as far as I'm concerned, is to say thank you ever so much for your efforts.
Sorry if I talk
on behalf of the audience, but
I'm sorry if I talk too quickly, everyone. I was trying to cover a lot of ground there.
227 people watching you. 227. It's a lot of people watching you.
Good. I'm pleased. Thanks, everybody.
Again, thanks for the audience for joining us today. And please don't forget to request your CPDs just by sending an email to me. You got my email address somewhere. And before I forget, I'd like to say a big thank you to IET staff for making it happen. They helped a lot for us to set up this settings. Well, you are the chief host, Jai-Fang. Would you like to take it over, please?
Yeah, thank you. I think it was a very informative, extremely informative talk. Thank you, Mike. It was particularly impressive that they can record all such technical details. I don't know how we can do that. That was amazing. Thank you all, the audience, for your attending this event and all of the questions. We have more than 50 questions.
Just one more word to Mike. You are in danger of us asking for another.
As you know, so
you are under threat.
Jai-Fang knows this. I have prepared a lot of presentations for IET.
All right.
What we've said is, yeah, happy to do it. Very happy to do it. I enjoy doing it. It helps me learn. It helps me learn.
That's okay. We are all on the learning curve, I know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jai.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care of yourselves.
Yeah, and also final words is that Mike said he will give a serious talk on this topic. So please stay tuned.
All right.
Yeah. We're looking forward to that, Mike.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Jai-Fang. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.